Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell-Gillard!
Hello and welcome back to another instant reaction edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to break down what was, I suppose, technically a game of football up on the Gold Coast, my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, round 19 of the NRL has concluded for the Parramatta Eels. They went down 24-16 against the Gold Coast Titans, which crazily is actually a good result given where the game was heading after 19 minutes. Eels, I suppose, technically fought back. I don't know if that qualifies as a fight back, but they end up losing by 8 points. So in a week where the West Tigers got pummeled by the Sharks, I suppose it's a net positive, but it's not really a net positive. It's just less of a net negative.
Yeah, look, I'm still trying to get the chill out of my bones from a day out sitting in stands in the shade, first out at Granville and then out at Lidcombe, and dash home to watch what looked like was going to be the horror show that I feared early on. I'm not sure what it says. Well, I do know really what it says about where things are at when I'm almost happy that we've just lost by only 8 points to the Titans. Now, that's a pretty sad state of affairs that a Titans team that was there to be beaten, we lose by 8 points, or we lose 4 tries to 3, and I'm not horrified.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah.
And I should be, but I'm not. And that's, as I said, indicative of, I think, where things are at the moment. So, look, there were positive individual performances in a game where, again, some of the errors really defined what the result was going to be. So, look, we've got a bit to talk about today. We've got the NRL match to discuss. We've got the lower grades and both the women's games today. So at this point, I guess we very much need to thank our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, for helping us to get these podcasts and a lot of things that we do at TCT out to you every week. So thanks to Greg and the team out there. And John, over to you for the main stats of the game.
Yeah, up on the Gold Coast, Seabus Super Stadium, like I said, round 19 of the NRL, and this was a pretty lowly seeded game. It was 15 versus 16 coming into this week, but the Titans were on a 2-game winning streak. They ended up prevailing 24-16. Tries for Khan Pereira bagging an early double within 12 minutes, followed by Philip Sami and Brian Kelly. Jaden Campbell falls off the tee. On the other side of things, Luca Moretti getting an opportunistic try after some sharp work from Blaze Talangi to intercept the rather crazy offload by AJ Brimson, it must be said. Will Penasini scoring in the 58th minute and Guffo getting over in the 65th. Dejan going 2 from 3. 60s, before I go any more stats, is there something personal with Philip Sami and Guffo and the Eels that I've missed? Because that's multiple times now he's done the Guffarino when he scored against us. The first time could have been seen as a cheeky little bit of not banter, or not verbal banter, but dance banter, I suppose. But he did that again tonight, and he also got pretty fired up against Joe Fungahi late in the game. Is there something I'm missing to this?
No, I don't know. Maybe he's a bit of a mug lair with that sort of thing. I don't think he won any fans with doing it because, as you say, we're not aware of any feud. We're not aware of any disrespect that Clint Gutherson's given him. Gutho's not one for disrespecting opponents. And, yeah, he's just, I guess he's been a bit of a knob with it, not to be blunt.
Yep. Anyway, that's a little bit of insight into that situation alongside the try scorers. In terms of key stats, Eels actually end up with more ball some way, somehow, 60s, 53% of possession. I don't know how. Because it felt like the Gold Coast had an absolute tidal wave of possession throughout long stretches of that game. Gold Coast completed 86%, to Parramatta's 75%. And again, how did we get to 75%? After that first 20, 25 minutes of play, It felt like it would have been under 50% completion, but well, okay. Eels ahead on the run stats. More runs, more meters, more post-contact meters. Line breaks slightly in favour of the home team, 6-5 for the Gold Coast. Tackle breaks very similar too, 45 for the Gold Coast, but 44 for Parramatta. Eels with the solid play the ball speed, but more offloads. Then we go down to defensive tackle rates, and both coaches aren't going to want to be peeping this one. Eels with a very ordinary 84.34%, which is still over 2 points better than the Titans, who have an 82.11% tackle rate. So defense secondary in this one, despite a relatively low-scoring encounter, given what we've seen in recent weeks. And then in terms of discipline, Eels gave away 5 penalties to the Gold Coast 4, and then gave away 5-6 agains to the Gold Coast 4. But the Titans do have 2 players on report, including a hip drop tackle on Brendan Hands for AJ Brimson, I believe. Personal stats or player stats we'll get to shortly. 60s, I thought what you want to say?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how long's it been since our opponents haven't got to 30 points in a match?
Yeah, well, I was saying to my old man and my brother watching the game with them, the Gold Coast Titans should be embarrassed, giving up scoring only 24 points against the Parramatta Eels, and then nearly getting us back into the game on the back of it. But yeah, obviously that was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek against both teams there. It has been a while. Let me tell you how long it is if I go to our draw very quickly. So obviously gave away 24 points this game. Then it was 32, 34. Believe it or not, so last 2 games being 30 plus, but then we had to buy, and then before that the Roosters got 28 against us, and then the Dogs 22. So
okay,
yeah, not as bad as it feels like, but still not ideal.
Well, and I think until this round, or I think have the Tigers got us now for the worst offensive team? I mean,
surely they've been pummeled a few times
there
now. Yeah. So Eels with so showing, I wouldn't call it gumption, but not complete capitulation against the Titans, has restricted the damage to an overall negative of 494 to the Tigers 496. So Eels moving up in the world, ladies and gentlemen. As they the 8-point loss being quite critical. I mean, in terms of for and against, Eels now sit at a relative plus 50 to the Tigers. So this was a big round for that, but obviously not what we wanted in terms of results. A win would have been way better. Now, in terms of key players, 60s, statistically, there's been a number of great efforts today. As always, it feels like, or almost as always, the fullback Gutherson, 234 metres, 23 carries. He had a line break, 4 tackle busts. Couldn't get got his name on the try assist or line break assist category, but we'll forgive him for that. Then you had the entire back line going over 100 metres. Dillbags, 167. Reg in his 100th game as an Eel was excellent. I know he had a line break off the line dropout that was, you could say, inflating stats, but it was still a terrific run. But he also had 14 carries for over 200 metres in this one. Huge effort from the big man, 4 tackle busts and a couple of offloads as well. Other solid forwards, Joe Fungahi, 140 metres, Maddo, 130. Then off the interchange, a couple of good performances. Sean Lane, who deservedly has been, topic of criticism this year, but he got 170 metres off 15 carries. Pretty good effort there. And then Luca Moretti finally gets his first look back in first grade this year not this year, but from early this year, sorry. And I thought he played really well. No errors, which was a big thing that we've been talking about with Luca. It's not about the quality of his effort, it's been about the errors. And he backed it up with the try that we mentioned before, and then 17 carries for 170 metres. So great production there. Defensive leaders, let's pull up these stats here. Most tackles goes to Brendan Hands, who played big minutes here. In fact, he played the entire game. 37 tackles, 1 missed, 2 ineffective, so great effort from Brendan there. Other big tackle efforts, 33 from Matter, but he missed a stack of them, so not as effective in that regard. 27 from Charlie Geimer, who got knocked out of his game with what looked to be a knee or ankle injury. So the young lock had a good game up until that point, but then got taken out. And also 27 tackles for Joffa as well. So good efforts there from the middle forwards. Headlined by Brendan Hands, 60s, who had a big defensive effort in that game. But it was down by 8 in this one. Where do you want to start with the post-mortem? Because it could have been, we were on track for a 50 or 60-point loss in that opening barrage where we kept making really bad mistakes and the Titans capitalised with quick shifts to their left edge. And instead, the Eels arguably could have been in this game with a little bit more spark inside the red zone, but ended up going down by 8.
Yeah, I just had the feeling that the Titans maybe got a little bit of ahead of themselves, invited Parramatta back into the game, and we sort of poked our head through the door and said hello, but, couldn't really take the full stride through the threshold. And I think that's probably how I saw it. It was a game that if the Eels were on song, it's a win, right? Because to get within 8 points today, to score one try less than the Titans is in the form that we're in, says that the Titans weren't truly switched on. Now, I'm not going to take away any credit that the Eels might deserve for that, because what I think happened, as I said, I think they poked their head through the door and said hello. They got a bit of an incentive, and I think the effort and execution improved, because for the most part in that second half, the completion rate was quite high. I think there was probably until about the last few minutes, and unfortunately it was when we put ourselves really back in contention on the scoreboard. I think there was only one incomplete set, and then somehow we managed to find some errors early in tackle counts, especially after set restarts. I think we saw Will Penasini throw a ball over the sideline, and we saw Cartwright throw a long pass that dipped on Reg, and he knocked on, and they were, I think, on first or second tackles on the attack deep in Titans half. So, I think if we were performing a bit better, maybe if Mitch Moses was playing in the game, who knows? They might have just had enough in them today to get across the line for a try or two more. But it's this sort of season, isn't it, John? I mean, could have, would have, should have. We keep using those sorts of words.
There's clearly a Paul or a funk that's settled in over the team that, as fans of the Eels, we've seen far too often, where you can tell that they can jag a win here or there, like against all odds, but they're not going to be competitive for winning anytime soon. Like we've seen this in the past. The squad, I wouldn't say they've checked out, because clearly we saw, looking at those numbers and then backing out with the eye test, that there are plenty of guys trying out there, but they're, as a team, they're not working. Like it is just, the pieces aren't going together right now.
They're out of sync.
Yeah.
They're badly out of sync. And look, to an extent, there's what's at play there is the number of players that are absent, so that's going to be a factor. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that the Eels can use that as an excuse, but it is a factor in now in a game like today. If you had a look at the team that the Eels fielded today and the number of players that were unavailable, and you just go, well, I mean, the Titans were at really short odds to win this, and I don't think they won it like a team that was at such short odds. I mean, they never looked in danger. They weren't fully threatened, but maybe the Eels could have, Dejan Arce kicks that goal, and who knows? I mean, if it was down to a 6-point game in those closing, 5 to 6, 7 minutes, then maybe the Titans feel a bit of pressure. Maybe the Eels don't throw a crazy pass or two, going for miracle balls, that sort of thing. So, again, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I mean, it's unfortunately it's the nature of this season to be saying things like that. But if we deal purely in facts, here it is. It's another loss. One of probably a lot more that we're going to see before the end of the year. Unfortunately, I mean, when we were talking, not with our hearts but with our heads in the preview podcast, we said a win was unlikely. So, I mean, we're now facing some stronger teams.
I mean, we've been tipping with our hearts for a good few weeks now, or even more maybe. And we've been making note of that in the preview pods. The head saying one thing, the heart says another. And look, given where we're at in this game, it sucks to say it, but you feel almost like a sigh of relief that we only lost by 8 points, because
and that's what I was saying. It was it's a measure of where we're at.
Exactly. That
we feel that way
beaten
about a
into
lot.
submission as both a team and as a fan base right now. But yeah, look, you look at the talent across the two back lines there, and I know the Eels have got plenty of injuries, but the Titans have just oodles of speed across their 1 to 5. Used it very effectively in that 20-minute period to open the game, and then forgot about it for a good portion of it. But yeah, the Eels are just, they're very, there's a big depreciation on talent available for them right now. They might be without Chowie Guyman now moving forwards. You have to wait and see what the report is on that. Just lost Junior Barlaw. They just lost Morgan Harper too, by the way. Provisionally have lost him. He left the field in Reggie's. So it's dire times and getting even worse for Parramatta on that front. And yeah, we've made, don't want to bang the drums again, but the roster was short on depth already. It's been hit by an absolute swarm of injuries. So it doesn't get better for the Parramatta Eels, or for fans. And the fact that they managed to get themselves back to being competitive in this game, I do tip my hat to them a little bit in that regard. They could have rolled over, very easily could have rolled over. But they dug in a bit there and tried to fight, but just didn't have the polish in the red zone and it's not even patience. It's just like you said, things are clunky right now. Things are out of sync. There are guys clearly trying to, spark something, but then, the rest of the team or the guys off them don't really see it or aren't in position for it. So yeah, the fact that we lost by 8, probably a small blessing here, but losing Chowie Guyman sucks. So I hope he's okay and capable of playing next week, and not playing through injury or anything like that. Was frustrating watching.
Let's try and find some positives out there, because we've just been moaning about a whole range of things, and that's because there are reasons to feel that way. But if we look at some positives today, we got the first try really from a Titans mistake, but let's praise the awareness of Blaze Talangi with that, because he got himself, he was down on the ground after the play the ball, and
it started even before that. Sorry, you're right. Play the ball. It started because he did one of the things that we've been criticising the boys for, is using some effort and speed to get locked back in at marker. And because he did that and then put a bit of pressure on the runner, he didn't make the initial tackle, but cut him back in field where there was no support. Brimson then forces, frankly, a very stupid offload. He shows great hands to dive on it, and then great vision to find Luca for the offload. So yeah, that was very good wherewithal and situational awareness from Blaze. Good of Luca to back himself in that situation as well. And I mean, we mentioned statistically, and both with the eye test and the numbers, there were plenty of great efforts here from the Parramatta Eels. Like, there were plenty of guys that had big games, but that's sort of when you compartmentalize and isolate all that stuff. That's been true of most of the season too. Is we've had guys having good games consistently, but we're both making stupid mistakes, and frankly today there was a whole raft of them. There was some really bad protection of the ball coming out of our red zone, which essentially set up the Titans for 12 points. And then when we get our opportunities, that whole lack of synchro that you're talking about, 60s, is really coming to the fore, where, you know, there's opportunities that are there and we're leaving on the ground. And worst thing is that not only are we missing those opportunities, but we're turning those opportunities into mistakes. You know, Matt Dury had a chance to either go for himself or find support down the right sideline for maybe Jake Tungall with an early ball from Dylan Brown. And then he, you know, ends up tripping over and then losing the ball. And then we had a couple other instances like that where, yeah, it compounds and compounds so quickly.
Yeah, and it's almost like every week we look for a way to explore different sorts of errors to make.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
I can tell you, they only had to have a look at the lower grade games today, and they would have had the full alphabet of errors.
Oh.
So, yeah,
we'll talk about Cup later, but goodness.
Yeah,
talk about a game of two halves.
But let's try to continue on with talking about the positives, because we had a try to Will Penasini where he did a good job because he looked like he was going to hit the ground. He managed to keep a great balance,
great contact balance,
forward.
Yeah, low to the ground.
Yep. So that was a very good moment. And of course, I don't think there's anyone as deserving as Clint Gutherson of getting across, and that was again a combination of smart football from him and just effort play, just a big effort play to get that ball grounded between the posts. And
I missed who set up that try off the quick played ball, but they deserve a shout out too. So if any commenters know who it was, pop it in the comments, because that was sparked entirely because whoever ran the ball got up fast, took the markers out, and gave Guffo that channel to run in behind.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember who that was. Obviously, we can get that on the replay. But, yeah, apart from that, you've already given a shout. Well, you gave Gutho a shout-out earlier as well for his efforts today, talking about an entire back line, actually, that apart from Dejan Arce, and we're including the halves, each of them ran for over 100 metres. With Gutho clearing that 200-metre mark and Dylan Brown next on 167 metres. So big efforts from them. But you also gave a shout-out to Reagan Campbell-Gillard. And, yes, as you stated, he got a lot of those. He got a lot of metres carrying the ball back from longer dropouts. But I tell you what, it was those meters weren't just clear space. He took on the line and broke through the line. It was Reagan Campbell-Gillard of old today in that regard. So I have to give him credit there. And also, you know, there's 31 tackles made on top of the 202 run meters. And we're not just talking about stats here, because the eye test said that Reg had a really big game. So, yeah, congratulations to him, most definitely on that. And you've mentioned Luca Moretti. In coming into the team this week, we knew that we were going to get something similar to what Charlie Geimer brought last week, which was energy and effort. And that's probably what we need most of all in the closing rounds of this season from the players that are in the team each week. And finally, Sean Lane, as you said, he's been rightly criticised each week. And today, playing in the middle of the field, he produced a game where it was just get the run meters up. That's your role. Just keep carrying that ball as strongly as you can, keep grinding the meters away, and he delivered in that regard. We don't need to see him thinking about anything else other than taking the team forward. I don't believe he's an edge forward anymore. I think he's a middle, and he was able to get that for us today in that middle role. So, yeah, in a losing team, credit to those players. Look, mate, apart from that, I don't think there's really too much more that we need to say, because we're talking about errors being costly today. We're talking about individuals being able to produce good efforts, but...
Well, one thing I did want to mention, and it's not to put Trent Barrett on blast, because he's inherited a pretty shit situation. Like we've spoken about it, as always, at length for this thing. But I think he needs a much better defined plan for what he's going to do with Matt Arthur, because bringing him on in the 71st minute isn't really a plan. He's better off playing reserve grade otherwise, or give him an actual role. And it's funny because in his debut game, we praised Trent for getting it right. Like playing him either side of half time is such a good fit for this team. It helps bring the tempo up through the middle in a window where we traditionally start to wilt a bit. And it worked so well against Newcastle, even if we didn't get the win at the end because of those 18-point turnaround that we spoke about in that instant reaction podcast with the two Bradman Best against run of play tries that resulted in obviously 2 tries for him, but then the Eels also bombing 1 try. So yeah, I want to see Trent get back to that. And that's not to say Brendan Hands didn't play well tonight, but he can play very well in rotation as well. If anything, he can go harder. So yeah, I would like to see that rectify, because there's not much point in a kid playing 8-9 minutes of first grade.
Not when you're thinking about the development of the player. And I mean, we're not losing sight of what's happening in the game. And look, there are many occasions where a coach might go, you know what, I don't want to swap this player out or that player out, and that might mean a certain player gets no minutes that's on the bench. It does happen occasionally. But we've had a couple of weeks now with Woodsy. So I just think for his development, I'd like to see him getting far more minutes than what he is. And if it's a situation where that's not going to change, maybe he'd be better off running around in New South Wales Cup and getting more game time.
Yeah.
Although I guess the other side of the coin is, if you were to ask him what he'd prefer, he'd probably
no doubt. But it's just single-digit playing time in the NRL doesn't really help anyone. No. And like I said, the blueprint is there from what we saw against Newcastle. That works so nicely in that game, and you can't play the same game plan even when it comes to bench rotations every week. Like there needs to be some dynamic reactiveness to how the game is playing out, as opposed to how you thought it was going to play out. I understand that, but in the same token, 71st minute never really is going to help anyone. So I'd like to see that changed, and like you said, beyond that, some real gutsy efforts from individual players today. The team is clearly fractured. I don't know if you want to say on a spiritual level, but something like that when it comes to forgetting how to win 60s. And on that note, we move on with the bye awaiting them.
Yeah. Did you want to give a 3-2-1 for
today?
I
suppose the fact they dug in and staved off the absolute pounding probably merits a 3-2-1. Look, 100th game as an Eel. I know that you could argue Guffo had a better game, but 100th game as an Eel, he tore in big time, played huge minutes in this one. Entire first half, if I'm not mistaken, and then 69 minutes NRL.com's got him down for. Had a really big effort, 31 tackles, 4 missed across that, so great effort from the big man. I'm going to give it to the centurion as an Eel, Reagan Campbell-Gillard.
Yeah, I'm going to probably agree with you. To me, I could just as easily give it to Gutho, but 69 minutes played for a middle forward in their 100th game for the club. Yeah, I've got to give it to him, even if it's just for sentimental reasons.
And he definitely put himself in the conversation too. That was a great game. But 3 points for the big man, 2 points for the captain. I thought Guffo was again, he's fighting through whatever's going on with his knees. Like God knows how bad it is, because he's not goal kicking, and you can see that he's dealing with frustrations with the officials and all that stuff that comes with being a captain, but he's still fighting for everything for the Eels. So well done to him for another captain's knock.
Okay, and I'll agree with you on that. And there's not really anything more I can add other than, I would fear what the match would look like without him. 1 point today. What's your tip there?
Yeah, got a few people that could have easily taken this. Dillbags, I thought, was pretty good in the absence of Mitchell Moses. Tried his backside off. The competitive spirit to deny the try to Jojo Fafita at the end. Khan Pereira. Khan Pereira was on the left side for them. Was classic Dylan. He didn't need to be in the frame for that, but he made the knock on happen by getting the tackle on the hand there. Likewise, I thought Joe had another really good game. I thought Matto was really solid. Lane had a good bounce back game, but I suppose the tiebreaker for me was this guy got handed an opportunity to come back in the first scrub by way of injury. He's been stuck in Reggie's for a good chunk of the season after his initial stint in the NRL, and the way he responded is exactly how I want to see people coming into the team respond. So Luca Moretti scoring a try, 170 metres on the ground, really bust his ass this game. I thought he made a good difference.
Look, every one of those players that you've just mentioned deserves a shout out because it was a case of some very good individual efforts and performances from players, not enough as a team to get us across the line. But I'm going to go with Dylan Brown there because there were two direct try saves that I saw tonight, and both of them were on Khan Pereira. So there's an effort, major effort factor in that to get himself in position to do that, because if they're running 100 metres side by side, who's going to get the win in that, and yet somehow Dylan Brown's chased in both instances, and in one instance forced Khan Pereira to put in a poor kick as an option, and in the second he's managed to dive across and hit Khan Pereira's arm as Pereira's literally putting the ball down. Now, that is those effort-on-effort plays. That is like genuinely caring about stopping a try when the game is probably lost, especially with that second one. So, I can't go past Dylan Brown. So, mate, how do you want to go now with the rest of the podcast in terms of order? I'm thinking NRLW trial, and then we go in terms of age groups from there, go from there to the New South Wales Cup, then the Harvey Norman Women's, then finish with the Jersey Flegg. And then that allows us to finish on a bit of a high with the Jersey Flegg being winners today as well. So the NRLW trial.
Yeah, so
pretty positive.
Yeah, this one took place simultaneous to the Jersey Flegg out at the home of Women's Pathways for Parramatta right now, Eric Tweedale Stadium, or Eric Tweedale Park, which is a great little complex there, isn't it, Sixties? And they played the St. George. They are the St. George Illawarra Dragons in the NRLW, or is it just the St. George Dragons? It's got to be the merger, surely. And they had a really good showing in their first outing under Steve Georgiawa, Sixties, playing a pretty good team. The Eels announced the roster, so I can tell you who took to the field here, because I was watching this one on, it was meant to be on parrieels.com, but it was on NRL.com, and they announced their team list here. So Eels went with this squad: Abby Church at fullbacks, no surprises there; Zoe Fay and Monique Donovan on the wings, who were both regulars last year in those positions; Mia Middleton and Rosie Kelly, the new recruit from Sevens, in the centres. Cassie Toi Hiku started her journey in a new position at 5'8", partnering Rosie Beckett. They gave Rachel Pearson, I don't know if it was injury or just a chance for Rosie, but Rosie Beckett playing halfback there. In the front row, Elsie Albert, Maddie Jones, and Ruben Charrington. Boss Kapua, Mahalia Murphy on the edges, Kennedy Charrington at lock forward. Then on the interchange, the extended interchange, you got Tanika Todd-Hunter, Tyler Amiatu, Jade Fanua, Ruby Jean Kennard, Tafawa Asua, Chloe Jackson, Rory Owen, Kate Fallon, Chelsea Mikira, and Yasmin Baker. So that's a good long, if not all, I think maybe one player short of their official, because it's the top 24, isn't it, for the the NRLW, I believe, plus development. So Eels not using their full quota of players there, but plenty of them. And they end up winning in a game where they weren't kicking goals, 5-2. So 20-8 was the scoreboard. Eels were in complete control at halftime, up 3-0, and then obviously consolidated in the second half. But yeah, really good game from the Eels. Steve Georgalis has spoken to us, obviously, when we're doing our junior rep podcast, and sort of turned the focus on the NRLW about how he wanted to shape this team. And we saw that today's 60s. Really strong structure, playing up-tempo, showing the ability to attack both sides of the field, and integrating their backline really nicely. So Abby Church scored the opening try, venturing down the right, had the opportunity to hit the gas and split the team open, and did that. We saw Cassie Toahiku heavily involved, creating some opportunities for her players. And then the forward pack, Elsie Albert setting the tone in both attack and especially defense. So really good stuff from our girls. You can catch the replay, I'm pretty certain, on NRL.com for those that missed it, because they archive all their footage there. So a chance to maybe Sunday have a cup of tea or have a bit of lunch and put the stream on.
Yes, I've actually had to watch the match as a replay on the NRLW on the NRL.com site. So I was out at Lidcombe when that match was on. So yeah, I've had to watch it in replay, and it was. Let's just say, not only did Steve have that chat to us about the type of play that he was looking at providing for the Eels this year, or coaching the Eels towards this year, but also in that training session that I went to watch, a couple of the comments that I made was about the structure of the play, the speed of the play, and the communication in defence, the how fit Elsie Albert looked in her return from what was an injury-plagued 2023. The involvement of Abby Church, I thought, was a factor that we would see based on the what was happening on the training track. And I think on top of that as well, it was a case of the really positive attitude that the team brought. And finally, Cassie Toahiku, she really has arrived as a player, I think. We've been talking about her potential in the couple of seasons of NRLW that she's been involved in, and because she's a very young player. And we've seen her on the wing. We saw her in a bit closer at centre in her second season, and we were banging on about we'd like to see her more involved in the play, whether that came through being in the halves or being at fullback. And Steve Georgalis said to us that it was his intention to play her in the halves, which I know when we spoke to him, we let him know how happy we were to hear that. And she certainly delivered today, and the try that she scored off the scrum,
yeah, just so classy running the ball.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I think she's got confidence in her ability, but I'm not sure if she understands how good she could be, because I still feel like she's got. And obviously she's young, so there's a lot more development that's going to happen with her as she becomes a seasoned NRLW player. But I just think there's a number of gears still that she hasn't gone through. She has that look of this game could be easy for her. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a natural for her to be playing.
Yes.
And that when she discovers the full depth of her rugby league powers, that she's going to be tough to hold out for other NRLW teams. So, look, I guess that's the main take. It was only a trial, so that's always a factor. But very much what we saw today were those key things. Important players in the team that are in good shape, look like they're going to be in good form. great structure to how they're playing, really good defensive attitude, and playing the game at pace. And I think that'll hold them in reasonably good stead. How that will compare to the way the game will be played in the NRLW this year, time will tell. But I think I'm going to be confidently tipping that we don't finish at the bottom of the table in the NRLW this season.
Yeah, low bar obviously to try and clear, and given also you don't want to read too much into a trial result, but they play good positive football, and that's exactly what you want to see from at this stage of the preseason. And we're hoping that they can carry that into the season proper and maybe make some noise early on. And if they can bag a few wins to start the season, you build that confidence that's so mercurial in this competition.
I'd like to think that at some stage, John, that they will be looking like they are competing for finals football, if not actually competing for finals football. So, I mean, it's probably a big call to make, but I just saw enough ingredients today that they will make an impact in the competition this season. So I guess time will tell whether I've getting a bit too carried away with their effort in a trial game. So, okay, that now takes us to... I don't know if I even want to talk about the New South Wales Cup today because...
What do you mean? They won 28-4. Great game. They played the awesome football. This
is a Jekyll-Hyde performance of monstrous proportion.
If you ever wanted to see a game of two halves, like personified literally, then this is it, because the Eels have squandered a monster lead at halftime. They played fantastically for 40 minutes to lead the Warriors 28-4 at halftime. And the New South Wales Cup Game Centre is not working for this one, and I'm just trying to remember my notes for this one. I know that rookie debutant Mohamed Al-Madin had a great first half. He scored a fantastic individual try to open the game, and then set up Ethan Sanders on the stroke of half-time. And in between that, we saw Jock Brazel pass back inside the Josh Lynn for a great try. There was a try to Isaac Lumi in the left corner. Who else scored? Oh, I'm having a brain fade after that. Do I have a team list in front of me? That will help as well, I suppose. If we go to...
You could look at your own blog there.
No, I can't. I've got a technical issue when I'm on my main computer. I can't do that, remember? So, Zach Sandy scored off a crossfield kick from Ethan Sanders next to the posts. And then anyone else I remember scoring? I can't remember after that. But the Eels played fantastically in the first half. And the only reason the Warriors scored a try was Woodrow McGregor got penalised for a late hit off the ball that allowed them to get downfield and set up a try down their left edge where it looked like they weren't really doing much, but then a late offload from their centre to their winger looping back underneath towards the posts created a channel to score in. So it looked like at half-time that the Eels were not only going to win, but win handsomely and boost their for and against. And then the second half happened, 60s, and putrid doesn't begin to describe it. I thought there was a couple of ordinary calls from the ref, and maybe that's probably rough on the ref too. I think there was one bad call where the Eels clearly had someone held up in goals, which meant it was a 10-metre restart, but they let the play happen 1 metre out, which resulted in a try. But beyond that, Zach Seni had a nightmare stretch. He dropped the regulation clearing kick that led to a try. Next set, he caught the regulation clearing kick, but then lost it into contact, which led to a try. Morgan Harper blew his knee out, I think, so Dan Keir got thrown into the centres, and then poor Dan Keir threw a couple of speckies over the sideline late in the game. It was, I don't know, you name it, the Eels went wrong. They kicked out in the full from a kickoff. They forgot how to tackle through the middle. They stopped competing for high balls. It was absolutely diabolical.
Yeah, it was. Look, it's a horrible ground to watch from out at Lidcombe.
Yeah, it's a big athletic, the old athletic style complex, cricket, AFL, track sort of stuff. So you're miles away from
cycling track.
There you go. So you're miles away from the action.
And of course, if anyone of an older vintage like me would well remember that even the great premiership winning teams of the Eels struggled every time they went to Lidcombe Oval. And for some reason, the Magpies would hammer us out there. And I hated going to Leichhardt Oval to watch games, not only because it was just an abysmal ground to try to watch football from, because there just isn't any elevation. If you are, there's no elevation. You're miles from the play. It's just an awful, awful ground. The only advantage today with where we were sitting was they have replaced the broken bucket seats that were in the stand, and that stand there. Anyone that's gone to Lidcombe Oval knows that when they had those bucket seats in those rows there, it was actually impossible to move past another person if there was someone sitting in the row. To move past them, you would have had to climb up on the seats behind them or in front of them, because there was no space between your knees and the seats in front. It was just awful. So at Eastdale, they've got those flip back seats, but yeah, it brought back horrible memories today, John, being out there and watching the reserve grade just go down in the manner that they did. I in all honesty, I was counting the 2 points at halftime, and who wouldn't at 28-4?
And how well they were playing, and then
and how well they were playing. And you're right, it was like there was a sequence of calls where it was, well, it wasn't just the calls. It was, if something was going to go wrong, it seemed to go wrong. And it was the team at that stage wasn't in control of it, because you had one or two individuals making errors and the referee coming down harshly with some calls. But after that, it all just fell apart. As you could see, there were hands on the hips. There were just, the whole body language. Even when they were still winning by like 12 points and 6 points, there were hands on the hips. There was like a look of defeat on them. And what I would say it was, the game looked like to watch, if anyone's ever watched a training session where there's opposed and the coach just gives one team in the opposed all of the ball to practice defense for the other team, or to practice attack for the team with possession, but you might have 10 minutes of non-stop attack and defense for each side in the opposed session, and that's what it looked like, except it was 40 minutes of the Warriors being handed the ball, because the Eels barely touched it, and when they did, it was to drop the kick that was put through, or to make an early tackle error, or not, just or just not being able to stop a try being scored from the kickoff set. It was just awful. I don't really want to talk about it anymore, mate. I thought I'd seen the worst of New South Wales Cup when I watched and reported on that game against the Raiders. And it probably still takes the cake in terms of the overall standard from two teams. Today, I saw a second half of football that, it was 42-0 in the second half. I think that says enough, doesn't it? Yeah. So we'll
legendary collapse, unfortunately, and the Parramatta Eels have to wear that one in a spot that could have put them into the top 6 at the end of the round. So
yeah. When it was there, who knows? It's like after the game against the Raiders, and then that, it's hard to talk up a team that produces that, to be honest. So now let's head to the Harvey Norman women's match, which I was covering out there at Granville Park, where the Dragons defeated Parramatta by 20-14. what we're talking about in this game is coach killer stuff, because the Parramatta Eels had far more potency in their side than what the Dragons did. But the errors, John, the errors that the team made, and they were just about punished. Like, for those St George tries that were scored today, I'm struggling to think whether there was any that didn't come off the back of an error where the Eels were deep in possession and just turned over the ball and were immediately punished. And you know what? I think there's about 2 or 3 times that we were penalised for an incorrect play the ball. Like, so in possession and penalised. It was, when I said there was the gamut of errors today, that was the case. Now, what we did learn today, well, there was some very good play mixed in with the errors, and the errors were defining for the Eels. But there was still some very good play, and my main takeaway from this is Raf Perigo must start.
Well, she was a star at Tasha Gale this year. Like, she had football and playmaking skills that were well beyond her peers on both sides there when we saw her in action in the Gale. So I'm not surprised that you're calling her out now in a positive manner, because she is a very talented footballer.
John, she came off the bench today and immediately was setting a tone. And I'm going to tell you, like, you were just waxing lyrical about her performances in Tasha Gale. What I saw today from her was arguably better than what I saw in Tasha Gale. Like, I really have to stress to you just how good she looked out there. She did some magical stuff, like just for a start, her acceleration to get through the line. But here's one piece of play that I'll talk about. So the ball comes over to her on the left. The Eels are attacking the line. And I reckon in a run that's she's probably only advanced the ball about 5 metres because they were close to the line. But I reckon she's beaten about 12 tackles in the one run, like just looking to find a way through the defence. And what she did at the end of that as well was she put the ball onto now I think from memory that it was one of the props. It could have been Vailoaga, and she went very close to scoring under the posts. Maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it could have also been a Dimmick. Yeah, I'm just trying to think now. Anyway, to be in the blog. But then after doing that, she's then taken herself from the left side over to the right side. She's received a pass which dipped right down to about her knees as they've gone for this really quick shift to the right. And not only did she catch it, but she sort of scooped past it out to the centre, who then went on to score. I'm pretty sure that it was Peden that scored off her pass, but that pass was...
Yeah, it would have been Peden.
Oh, yeah, it was... Anyway, she has to start the game. She has to start the game next week. So she was genuinely that good. Now, what position they play her at, I don't know, whether she plays half, whether she plays 5'8", whether she even plays that sort of lock roll, and there's nothing of her. But whether she has to be in a playmaker role there somewhere. So, and the other thing they have to consider as well is goal kicking, because Bella Sanford was handed the goal kicking responsibilities as she was last week. But once, just in terms of how far she can kick the ball, once it starts to get out a little bit wider, and I'm talking about anything that's approaching 10 metres in from touch or wider, it's really a struggle to get the distance. And they do have Alicia Bell in the squad now. Whether they want to find a spot for her in the back line or not, or whether there's another player, if they aren't going to give Alicia a run, whether they look at another player who can get a little bit more distance on the kick. But it could be critical in getting a win. And today it was the some tries that went unconverted that could have been converted. So the 20-14 scoreline, the last kick from Sanford, from not too far away from the posts, hit the crossbar. And, just a little bit more oomph, and it's a 20-16 game, and then there's they're fighting to get a win rather than a draw.
Yeah,
so
the floor is a draw for a chance to win the game, exactly. So
yeah. So anyway, that's that probably wraps that up. And now, and after that, we had the Jersey Flegg over at Lidcombe.
yeah, the first game at Lidcombe Oval doubleheader. You were over there, 60s for this one. Eels prevailing 18-6, but the scoreboard not reflecting how one-sided this was in terms of offensive traffic. 4 tries to 1, but the Eels kicking the sole conversion. You talk about goal kicking being important here. Arpa Twiddle had a rough day at the office, 1 from 4, but try scorers, Antioch Vitala-Mariner, first try scorer, also bagging a double. Tyrese Lekenny getting the start and getting the try. Well done to Tyrese there. And then Ollie McCarthy continuing his strong start to his Flegg career with another try. So they're the scorers there, with Sia Latelli, Farmani both scoring and converting his own try for the Warriors. Anyone stand out in this one? 60s. Eels played a good first half, from my understanding, but then got a little bit sloppy in the second. But it does secure them yet another win as they edge towards an unlikely push to the finals.
Yeah, we were having a bit of a chat about this with the fellas there at the ground, and because I said to them, I'm struggling a bit in my mind about who the standout players were, and the reason that for that is, as you'd know, when you're blogging, there's an element of, well, you're pretty good at watching and typing, so I'm not. If I'm typing, I'm not watching. So I have chunks of the game that I miss when I'm trying to describe what's happening in the play. So it's a real, well, you'd know anyway, John, it's a real juggling act, isn't it, about the amount of time that you look to record something that's there as opposed to just purely watching the game. And for those that aren't aware, John's pretty good at touch typing, so he can type and watch as the game goes. Not unfortunately not me. But when we were talking, I said, look, part of the reason as well that I was struggling was because the first half was really, really good, but the second half was, I guess, the antithesis of that. It wasn't a great half of football from either team, that second half. So it was 14-0 at half time. And look, I guess from just based on that first half, Riley Smith is he's a really consistent performer. And he impressed. Vitala Mariner, had some good moments. Ollie McCarthy, you gave him a bit of a shout out as well. Arpa Twiddle, he can really look dangerous in the halves, Arpa. And I think for him, it's a matter of knowing when to pull the trigger and when not to pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. That he's learning that. It was good to see Tyrese Lakini up there, and Josiah Funaiuta. We got to see some big carries from him. He definitely doesn't look out of place rising from the SG ball to Jersey Flegg. Look, first half, in all honesty, in the first half, I could have just about listed any Eels player there because they played well individually, they played well as a unit, and then in the second half, we were just seeing just really scrappy play and, passes thrown that probably shouldn't have been thrown, balls dropped that shouldn't have been dropped. It was just, it was an ugly second half, but they'll take the win. And from there, who knows what happens? Because, again, as we said, after losing the first 7 games of the year, they were always going to be pushing the proverbial uphill. But, if they keep winning, who knows? I think if they end up finishing on the fringes of the top 6, they can feel pretty happy about what they've achieved in this season. So, I think that just about wraps it up, mate. Anything more you want to add about the day?
No. Obviously mixed bag of results there, but the Eels move on. NRLW starting to warm to their task as they approach their round 1 later this month, while obviously, like I said, mixed bag of results elsewhere. And, for the Cup, they're going to want to move on very quickly. But I think there was some instructive points for the HNWP, while NRL, they're going to have to keep fighting some way, somehow, 60s. So, on that note, I think we'll wrap it all up. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. A thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan, and Parramatta. Love those guys out there with Greg and the crew. And on that note, mate, I'll let you take it away.
Still going to say it. Go you mighty Eels.